What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. And today we're talking the December 23rd, 2024 edition of Raw Talk. We open up the episode with Megan Moran and Sam Roberts, as always, immediately getting into it and replaying the Dexter Lumis versus Miz match, or what we got of it anyway, on Raw on Monday night. We hear from Miz in the Final Testament backstage, the Final Testament kind of strategically planning their next move after they were thwarted by the Wyatt Six on Raw. Miz storms in and says, "Cross, what the hell was that? You interrupted my match with Dexter. You pissed them off. We had them beat. We beat them in that 8-man tag team match, whatever match that was a couple of weeks ago. We beat them, and you continue to piss them off. Why would you do that?" And you walked right back into I believe he says, the psycho den. And then Karrion Kross goes back to planning their next move. They then show highlights from the WWE Raw on Netflix kickoff, which I was there for. If you watch that kickoff highlight video, I'm actually shown a number of times. In the front, over to the left, if you're watching from the stage, I'm on the left, the fucking Santa hat on in Stamford, Connecticut last week, which was a really cool time to be in the HQ lobby for the first time. But so they show the highlights from that from last Wednesday, all of which, by the way, speaking of which, cheap plug here, I did post all the videos that I took from that event last Wednesday on the channel right before Raw last night. So if you haven't already checked them out from my POV, please do so. They're up right now here on the channel. So wanted to throw that in there while we were on the subject. We then come back from commercial and see Gunther, the World Heavyweight Champion, in the locker room with a Ludwig Kaiser who walks in. Gunther says that he's done with Priest and kind of mentions who's next for him. Kaiser says, "Oh, who are you next to defend your World Heavyweight Championship against?" And Gunther says that it's up to Adam Pearce to find a worthy challenger. And then Ludwig Kaiser's clearly out of it, and Gunther says, "What's wrong?" And Kaiser says, "Well, I called my shot last week for the Intercontinental Championship against Braun Breaker, and I lost." And Gunther tells him, "Listen, cut the emotional crap. You got to start acting with your head and not your heart. And I want you to go out there and show everyone what I already know, and that you're a star, win gold, blah, blah, blah." So they're clearly planting the seeds and have been for a while now with this whole Gunther and Kaiser thing. A lot of these interactions have happened on Raw Talk, so if you've not been paying attention or have not caught these segments, then you haven't really been completely caught up in what they're trying to do here and tease and plant the seeds for. Probably a future match between the two. I wouldn't go so far as to say at WrestleMania. I don't know if that's a WrestleMania-worthy match at this current point in time. But maybe Kaiser challenges him for the World Heavyweight Championship at some point. Maybe not at like the Rumble or Saturday night's main event quite yet, but it depends how long Gunther is the World Heavyweight Champion for. If he loses imminently that championship, then maybe not. Maybe it's a non-title match. But it seems like they are setting up for a full-on Imperium split with Kaiser completely breaking out on his own and first having to prove himself against Gunther. So keep an eye out for that. They then replay the Women's Intercontinental Championship Tournament quarterfinal triple threat match with Io Sky beating Natalya and Alba Fire to advance. In the studio, they hype up Dakota Kai versus Zoe Stark and Io Sky versus Lyra Valkyria in the semifinals on next week's final Raw of 2024. We hear from Pure Fusion Collective backstage afterward. Damage Control, or Shayna Baszler says that Damage Control, they keep getting hurt and they keep getting rewarded, and that it wasn't fair for Io Sky to take that spot when it really should have gone as Sonya Deville, which I appreciated, by the way, that Adam Pearce saw that. I don't know if it was actually revealed or if they admitted to it. I'm sure it was, obviously, them. Adam Pearce knew that it was Pure Fusion Collective attacking Kairi Sane to get Sonya Deville in the tournament, and he wasn't dumb enough to just give the open spot in the matchup, the triple threat this week, to Sonya Deville for being the one responsible for attacking Kairi Sane. That would have been just completely fucking dumb. So instead, he rewarded Damage Control, because a member of Damage Control was supposed to be in the match, so he gave this spot in the tournament to Io Sky, which I like. To an extent, I like Io Sky being in the tournament, but if she goes on to win this whole thing, that's cool and all, but I kind of want it to be Dakota Kai or Lyra Valkyria. And I don't know if Io Sky is going to lose to Lyra Valkyria next week. That's kind of my worry. But anyway, Sonya Deville says that Zoe Stark is one step away from winning that women's intercontinental title, and Zoe Stark kind of echoes that sentiment and says, "I vow to become the first inaugural women's intercontinental champion." Pretty basic stuff here. They replay Damian Priest versus Dominic Mysterio. They hype up Damian Priest in the War Raiders versus the Judgment Day in 6-man tag team action for next week's Raw. They replayed the great New Day segment from Raw where the New Day were in the ring, getting booed out of the building. Again, getting booed out of the building by the Boston crowd. This time, Kofi approaching his mother near the front row and her walking out on them, which was great shit. They then cut to Natalya backstage with R-Truth, and Natalya calls herself a failure. She feels like a failure for advancing in the Women's IC title tournament. And I'm glad she did not advance. I was worried as soon as I saw that she was involved in this thing. I'm thinking, fuck. She will not only probably advance, she will very likely win this. Not likely, but there's a chance that she could win this whole thing. Because obviously her family, Owen Hart, Bret Hart, not her father, but, Bret Hart, Owen Hart have all been the Intercontinental Champion, have had memorable runs as the IC champion, so they might think, oh, let's put the belt on her. Not right away. Maybe down the road. Right now, absolutely not. But R-Truth says that life's a butch. You got to get over it. R-Truth, continues to mention the word butch. Pete Dunne overhears him saying this and says, I told you to keep that name, that word, out of your mouth. So next week, I'm going to shut you up for good. So I guess we're getting R-Truth versus Pete Dunne again next week after R-Truth already beat this guy in a fucking minute or two a couple of weeks ago. They also replayed Chad Gable beating Akira Tozawa on Raw. We hear from American Made afterward. A much more serious promo from Chad Gable here. He says that he already knew Akira Tozawa and Maxine Dupree were disappointments, but he calls Otis the worst failure of all. He confirms he will be facing Otis in next week's Raw, fucking finally, so we can move on from this. And he says the student will indeed not become the master. They run down the Slam at 7 for the night before replaying Sami Zayn versus Drew McIntyre in the main event and all the post-match chaos with Jey Uso and the Bloodline. They then close the show with Sam Roberts' top 5 stars of the night: Io Sky, Chad Gable, Drew McIntyre, Dominic Mysterio, what else was new, and Kofi Kingston's mom for walking off on Kofi, which that was a nice touch. They also mentioned that the CM Punk Seth Rollins face-off will also be going down next week on Raw, the final Raw before they move to Netflix on January 6th. So that was Raw Talk in a nutshell for December 23rd, 2024. I thought both this show and Raw itself were actually more notable than I thought they would be. SmackDown on Friday, which was taped in Hartford the week before, and SmackDown Lowdown later that night were both pretty forgettable. But I thought Raw Talk here was actually pretty good. And I thought they did a good job of, recapping Raw, furthering storylines, planting the seeds for certain stuff, confirming multiple matches for next week's Raw that we were not already aware of, actually, and also building towards the big Netflix debut in 2 weeks. So, bit of a programming note here. Next week's Raw Talk will probably be, again, despite the fact that it's Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve, today is Christmas Eve. It should be up per usual. Beyond that, though, I'm not sure if I'll continue doing the Raw Talk reviews. I've been doing them since WWE resurrected Raw Talk and the SmackDown Lowdown / Talking Smack back in 2020. But, the show will probably go back to being 25 minutes long, 30 minutes long, as SmackDown Lowdown has been. But SmackDown Lowdown's been 25 minutes, even with SmackDown being 2 hours. But starting next month in a couple of weeks, SmackDown's going to be 3 hours, and Raw will also go back to being 3 hours. So just to kind of take less off of my plate, we'll still do content here on the channel, obviously, and I'll probably fill in that slot where we do SmackDown Lowdown and Raw Talk and shit with other content that I'm already putting up anyway. But just to kind of lessen my workload, I might stop watching these shows and might stop reviewing them. So just a heads up on that front. I might check out the first Raw Talk and SmackDown Lowdown of the new year. I might very well continue doing it. I'm not sure. But I've been, considering for a while now not doing these reviews anymore, starting in the new year. So keep an eye out for that. Next week might be the final Raw Talk review from me. We have been getting more meaningful stuff on the show, shockingly, since they went back to 2 hours in October. I don't think that's going to continue being the case in 2025. So I assume the show will be shorter and they'll put all the important shit back on Raw itself. And you can catch all the interviews that they do with the superstars on their WWE YouTube channel. Also, #AskGSM will still be up tomorrow, I believe, on Christmas itself. The day itself is always so predictable with family shit and whatnot, so I don't know when it'll be up, but I am planning to record the Christmas Day edition today on Christmas Eve. A lot of you guys already sent in questions through the usual social media platforms, so I will answer those questions, what I've gotten so far anyway, a little bit later on today, and that video should be up tomorrow. First thing tomorrow, I don't know, but I am hoping to record it today and not tomorrow on Christmas Day itself, but it still will be up. We don't take days off. We don't take weeks off. Christmas is no exception. So keep an eye out for that tomorrow as well. Have a great one, folks. Have a very Merry Christmas Eve. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the reindeer road.